The blood-red sun sank low over the dusty horizon as Amelia Grayson clutched her swollen belly, her feet blistered and raw from days of walking across the merciless New Mexico territory. It was 1876, and the promise of a new life had turned to ashes in her mouth like the dust that coated her cracked lips. 3 weeks earlier, her husband Thomas had succumbed to tuberculosis, leaving her alone and 6 months pregnant in a land that showed no mercy to widows. The small mining town they'd settled in had quickly made it clear she wasn't welcome once her husband was gone. The boarding house owner had given her 1 week to vacate, citing other tenants who needed the room. In truth, an unmarried pregnant woman was simply bad for business. With nowhere to go and no family to turn to, Amelia had packed what little she could carry and set out towards Santa Fe, where she'd heard there might be work for a woman who could read and write. But the road was longer and harsher than she had anticipated, and now, as the twilight deepened around her, she feared she'd made a fatal mistake. Her water canteen had run dry hours ago, and the pain in her swollen ankles had become almost unbearable. Amelia stumbled, catching herself with one hand pressed against a large rock, the other protectively cradling her unborn child. "Just a little farther," she whispered, though she had no idea how far farther might be. The next town could be miles away. Or perhaps there was nothing ahead but more dust and despair. In the distance, a coyote howled, the lonely sound echoing across the vast emptiness. Amelia shivered despite the lingering heat of the day. Night would bring cooler temperatures, but also dangers she didn't want to contemplate. She forced herself forward, one painful step after another. The road, such as it was, curved around a small hill, and as she rounded the bend, Amelia saw a light in the distance. Her heart leapt with hope and fear in equal measure. A light meant people, and people could mean help or harm. With renewed determination, she pressed on toward the flickering beacon. As she drew closer, the vague shape of a small ranch materialized from the darkness. A modest house, a barn, and what looked to be a corral. The light came from a lantern hanging beside the front door. Amelia hesitated at the property's edge. She'd learned the hard way that not all who offered shelter did so from kindness. But the baby kicked insistently, as if urging her forward, and her legs threatened to give out entirely. Drawing a deep breath, she approached the house and knocked weakly on the wooden door. Seconds stretched into an eternity before the door swung open, revealing a tall man silhouetted against the warm light behind him. He wore a dust-covered hat pulled low over his eyes, and his hand rested casually on the pistol at his hip. "Can I help you, madam?" His voice was deep but not unkind, though wariness edged his words. Amelia began, but exhaustion and dehydration overwhelmed her. The world tilted alarmingly, and she felt herself falling. The last thing she remembered was strong arms catching her before darkness claimed her completely. When Amelia regained consciousness, she found herself lying on a narrow bed, a rough wool blanket drawn over her. For a moment, confusion reigned. Then memory flooded back the endless road, the light in the darkness, the man at the door. She struggled to sit up, alarmed to find herself in a stranger's home. "Easy now," said a voice from across the room. "You're safe." The man from the doorway sat in a wooden chair by a small table. He'd removed his hat, revealing sandy blonde hair and a face weathered by sun and wind. He wasn't young, perhaps in his early 30s, but neither was he old. His blue eyes regarded her with concern rather than threat. "I fainted," Amelia said, embarrassed. "You gave me quite a start." He rose and poured water from a pitcher into a tin cup, then brought it to her. "Drink slowly. You're badly dehydrated." Amelia accepted the cup with trembling hands, sipping gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Norwood." "Adam Norwood." He returned to his chair, giving her space. "And you are?" "Amelia Grayson," she replied, then hesitated before adding, "I'm a widow." She didn't miss the way his eyes flickered to her swollen belly before returning to her face, but his expression remained neutral. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Grayson. It's been difficult." She finished the water, already feeling strength returning. I was making for Santa Fe. Is it far from here? 3 days' ride at least. Adam frowned. You were walking there alone. Amelia looked down at her hands. I had no choice. The silence that followed was heavy with unasked questions. Finally, Adam stood and took the empty cup from her. You need rest, Mrs. Grayson, and food. We can talk more in the morning. I don't want to impose. It's no imposition. His tone brooked no argument. I've got a stew warming. Think you can manage some? Her stomach growled in response and a flush crept up her cheeks. Adam's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. I'll take that as a yes. While he busied himself at the small stove in the corner, Amelia took stock of her surroundings. The cabin was simple but clean. One room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a curtained-off section that presumably held Adam's sleeping quarters. The bed she occupied must be for guests, though she suspected such visitors were rare. A few books sat on a shelf, surprising her. Ranchers weren't typically known for their literary habits. A rifle hung over the fireplace and various tools of ranch life adorned the walls. It was a bachelor's home, clearly, but not an uncivilized one. Adam returned with a bowl of stew that smelled better than anything Amelia could remember. She ate slowly, savoring each bite of tender beef and vegetables. This is wonderful, she said sincerely. You're quite the cook, Mr. Norwood. Adam, he corrected, and it's just a simple stew. Anything tastes good when you're hungry enough, nevertheless. She finished the bowl, feeling human again for the first time in days. I don't know how to thank you. No need. He took the empty bowl. Get some rest. We'll figure things out tomorrow. Despite her intention to stay awake and plan her next move, exhaustion pulled Amelia under almost immediately. She slept deeply, dreamlessly, awakening only when sunlight streamed through the cabin's small windows. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings. Then yesterday's events came flooding back. She was in Adam Norwood's home, having collapsed on his doorstep like a character from a dime novel. Amelia sat up, noting that she was alone in the cabin. Her shoes had been placed neatly beside the bed, and a basin of fresh water sat on the nearby table alongside a clean cloth. Gratefully, she washed her face and hands, doing her best to make herself presentable. Her dress was wrinkled and travel-stained, but there was nothing to be done about that. She smoothed her dark hair as best she could and stepped outside. The morning light revealed what darkness had hidden. Adam's ranch was small but well-maintained, nestled in a shallow valley with mountains visible in the distance. A corral held several horses and chickens scratched in the dirt nearby. A small vegetable garden grew alongside the house, and a stream glinted in the sunlight not far away. It was beautiful in a stark, honest way, nothing like the grimy mining town she'd left behind. Adam emerged from the barn carrying a pail of milk. He nodded at her. Morning, sleep well, better than I have in weeks, she admitted. Your home is lovely. A hint of pride crossed his face. It's not much, but it's mine. He gestured toward the house. Breakfast is waiting if you're hungry. Inside, she found coffee brewing and a skillet of eggs and bacon keeping warm on the stove. Adam poured her a cup of coffee while she helped herself to food. Mr. Norwood, Adam, she began, once they were seated. I can't thank you enough for your kindness, but I don't want to take advantage. If you could point me towards Santa Fe, I'll be on my way. Adam regarded her steadily. And what will you do in Santa Fe, Mrs. Grayson? Amelia, please. She shifted uncomfortably. I had hoped to find work. I can read and write, and I've done bookkeeping before. In your condition. His eyes dropped to her belly. Who would hire you? The blunt question stung, but she couldn't deny its truth. I have to try. I have nowhere else to go. Adam was silent for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. I need help around here, he finally said. The garden needs tending, and I could use someone to cook decent meals while I'm working the ranch. The cabin needs a woman's touch. Amelia stared at him, uncertain. Are you offering me employment? I'm offering you a place to stay until you have the baby, he clarified. After that, we can reassess. Hope and wariness warred within her. Why would you do this for a stranger? Adam's gaze grew distant. My sister was widowed young, no one helped her. He shrugged, as if embarrassed by his own kindness. I've got the space and I need the help. It's a fair arrangement. It was more than fair and they both knew it. Still, Amelia hesitated. I wouldn't want to cause gossip. A humorless smile crossed Adam's face. Nearest neighbor is 5 miles away, not much gossiping to be had out here. Amelia considered her options. There were precious few of them. Continue on to Santa Fe and face almost certain rejection due to her pregnancy, or accept this unexpected offer of sanctuary. All right, she said finally. I accept, but I insist on earning my keep. I'd expect nothing less. Adam nodded, seeming satisfied. The room you slept in is yours. It was meant to be for family someday. A shadow crossed his face so quickly she almost missed it. Anyway, it's yours now, thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said, rising. Ranch life isn't easy. But compared to what she'd endured these past weeks, compared to what might have awaited her on the road, Amelia thought it sounded very easy indeed. The next few days established a rhythm. Adam worked from dawn until dusk, tending cattle, mending fences, and handling the 1,000 tasks required to maintain even a small ranch. Amelia took over the domestic duties, cooking, cleaning, tending the vegetable garden. Despite her advancing pregnancy, she found the work satisfying. Each evening, they would share a quiet meal. Adam wasn't much for conversation, but occasionally he would speak of his day or ask about her past. She learned he had come west after the war between the states, seeking a fresh start. He'd bought this land 7 years ago and built it up from nothing. In turn, she told him about growing up in Philadelphia, meeting Thomas while he was studying medicine, and following him west when his health began to fail. She didn't mention her parents' bitter opposition to the marriage or their subsequent disowning of her. Some wounds were still too fresh. A week passed, then 2. Amelia's strength returned, and with it a sense of purpose she'd lost after Thomas's death. She expanded the vegetable garden, started making preserves from wild berries she found near the stream, and even convinced Adam to let her keep the ranch accounts, discovering several places where he'd been overpaying for supplies. For his part, Adam seemed pleased with the arrangement. He rarely smiled. She suspected he'd forgotten how, but his face softened when he came home to find hot meals waiting and clean clothes laid out. Once, she caught him running his hand over a quilt she'd mended, a look of quiet wonder in his eyes. They were careful with each other, maintaining a respectful distance. Adam never entered her room, and Amelia was mindful not to appear too comfortable or familiar. They were employer and employee, landlord and tenant, nothing more. Yet something was changing between them, subtle as a shifting breeze. Amelia found herself watching for Adam's return each evening, listening for the sound of his horse approaching. Adam lingered longer at meals, occasionally offering comments about her cooking or asking her opinion on ranch matters. One evening, as summer edged toward autumn, Amelia sat on the porch shelling peas. Her pregnancy had advanced to 7 months, and the heat of the day often left her feeling drained. The cooler evening air was a blessed relief. Adam returned from checking fence lines, dusty and tired. Instead of heading straight inside as usual, he settled onto the porch step beside her, removing his hat and running a hand through sweat-dampened hair. "Good day," Amelia asked, continuing her work, found a break in the north fence, fixed it before any cattle could wander off. He leaned back against the porch post, watching her hands move deftly over the peas. "You're good at that. My mother insisted I learn all the domestic arts." Amelia smiled faintly at the memory. She said no man would marry a woman who couldn't keep a proper home. "Your mother sounds like a practical woman." She was. The past tense slipped out before Amelia could stop it. Adam's gaze sharpened. Amelia hesitated, then sighed. "My parents disowned me when I married Thomas. They didn't approve of him or of our plans to move west. I'm sorry." "It was my choice." She kept her eyes on her work. "I don't regret it even now." Adam was silent for a long moment. You loved him very much. It wasn't quite a question, but Amelia answered anyway. I did. He was a good man, gentle, idealistic. Her throat tightened. He would have been a wonderful father. The baby chose that moment to kick vigorously, as if in agreement. Amelia gasped softly, her hand flying to her belly. Are you all right? Adam straightened, concern etching his features. Yes, it's just, she laughed shakily. The baby is very active tonight. Adam's eyes were drawn to her rounded middle, a strange expression crossing his face, curiosity perhaps, or wonder. Would you like to feel? Amelia offered impulsively, then immediately regretted it. Such intimacy was hardly appropriate, but Adam surprised her. May I? Hesitantly, he reached out. Amelia took his weathered hand and guided it to the spot where the baby was kicking. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came a solid thump against Adam's palm, his eyes widened, and something like awe transformed his face. That's remarkable. It is, Amelia agreed softly. Adam's hand lingered a moment longer before he withdrew it, almost reluctantly. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the rhythmic sound of peas falling into the wooden bowl. I should see to the horses, Adam said abruptly, rising. Supper will be ready soon, Amelia called after him. He nodded without turning, his broad shoulders tense as he walked away. That night, alone in her room, Amelia found herself dwelling on the moment Adam's hand had touched her belly, on the look in his eyes when he felt the baby kick. There had been such wonder there, such tenderness. It unsettled her, this growing awareness of Adam as more than just her benefactor. He was a handsome man in a rugged, weather-beaten way. More importantly, he was kind and honorable, offering shelter when others would have turned her away. But she was a widow, still mourning her husband. And Adam had never given any indication that he saw her as anything more than a responsibility he'd taken on. Amelia placed a protective hand over her belly. Just us for now, she whispered to her unborn child, but we're safe here. That's what matters. As her 8th month of pregnancy began, Amelia's thoughts turned increasingly toward the birth. The nearest doctor was in a town called Mesa Springs, a half-day's ride away. Adam had already made arrangements with Dr. Peterson, who promised to come when summoned, but Amelia worried. What if there wasn't time? What if something went wrong? She tried to hide her fears, but Adam was more observant than she'd given him credit for. You're worried about the birth, he said one evening as they sat by the fire. Autumn had arrived in earnest, bringing chilly nights. Amelia looked up from her mending, startled by his directness. A bit, she admitted. It's my first child and we're so far from help. Adam nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that. There's a woman on the Hernandez ranch, Senora Diaz. She's a midwife, delivered half the children in the county. I could ride over tomorrow, ask if she'd stay here as your time gets closer. Relief washed over Amelia. That would ease my mind considerably. Thank you, Adam. No need for thanks. He poked at the fire. It's the sensible thing to do. But they both knew it was more than that. It was care, consideration, perhaps even affection. The next day, Adam rode to the Hernandez ranch and returned with news that Senora Diaz would indeed come stay for the birth. One worry eased, but another took its place. What would happen after the baby arrived? Adam had offered her sanctuary until the birth. Would he expect her to leave afterward? The thought of striking out on her own with a newborn terrified her. Yet she couldn't expect Adam to support them indefinitely. These thoughts preoccupied her as she worked in the garden one crisp October morning. She was harvesting the last of the season's tomatoes when hoofbeats approached. Expecting Adam, she looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw a stranger riding toward the cabin. The man was well-dressed, with a neat beard and an air of authority. He reined his horse to a stop and tipped his hat politely. "Good morning, madam. I'm looking for Adam Norwood." "He's checking the herd," Amelia replied cautiously. "May I ask who's calling?" Judge William Harlow. He dismounted, tethering his horse to the hitching post. "And you would be?" "Amelia Grayson." She wiped her hands on her apron, uncomfortably aware of her disheveled appearance and obvious pregnancy. I'm Mr. Norwood's housekeeper. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly, but he merely nodded. I see. When do you expect him back? By midday, I should think. Would you care to wait inside? I can offer coffee. That would be most welcome, Mrs. Grayson. As they entered the cabin, Amelia felt the judge's assessing gaze. She busied herself making coffee, trying to ignore his scrutiny. How long have you been in Mr. Norwood's employ? He asked conversationally. Almost 3 months now. Ah. His tone was neutral, but something in it made Amelia bristle. And your husband doesn't object to the arrangement, her hands stilled. I'm a widow, sir. I see, he said again with a different inflection. Amelia turned to face him, chin raised. Judge Harlow, whatever you're implying, I assure you my relationship with Mr. Norwood is entirely proper. He offered me employment when I was in desperate straits, nothing more. The judge had the grace to look abashed. I meant no offense, Mrs. Grayson. It's just unusual to find a young widow in such a situation. These are unusual times, she replied evenly, setting his coffee before him. They fell into an uneasy silence until Adam returned. His expression darkened when he saw the judge's horse, and he entered the cabin with wary eyes. Judge Harlow, he said by way of greeting. What brings you out this way? Land dispute between the Morales family and Sam Tucker, the judge replied. I'm hearing both sides before making a ruling. Thought I'd stop by on my way, see how you're faring. There was history between these men, Amelia realized. Not hostility exactly, but a certain tension. I'm faring just fine. Adam poured himself coffee. Mrs. Grayson has been a godsend. The judge's eyes flickered between them. So I see. Amelia excused herself, citing garden work that needed finishing. As she closed the door behind her, she heard the judge say, Adam, people are talking. She didn't wait to hear more, hurrying back to her tomatoes with burning cheeks. Of course people were talking. An unmarried pregnant woman living with a bachelor rancher, it didn't matter how innocent the arrangement was. In the eyes of society, they were scandalous. When the judge departed an hour later, Adam found Amelia in the garden, her face still flushed with embarrassment and indignation. I apologize for the judge, he said without preamble. He means well. He thinks I'm your. She couldn't even say it. What people think doesn't matter out here. Clearly it does if the judge rode all this way to warn you about it. Amelia straightened, one hand supporting her aching back. Perhaps it would be best if I left after the baby comes. Adam's jaw tightened. Is that what you want? Of course not, but I won't have your reputation ruined on my account. My reputation, he laughed humorlessly. Mrs. Grayson, I've been the subject of gossip since I arrived in this territory. The reclusive rancher, the Yankee who doesn't attend church, the bachelor who refuses to court eligible daughters. Still nothing. His voice softened. You and the child need a home. I have one to offer. The rest is noise. Amelia stared at him, this man who had welcomed her into his life with so little fuss and now stood defending her honor as casually as if commenting on the weather. Thank you, she said finally, inadequately. Adam nodded once, then changed the subject entirely. The north pasture needs clearing before winter. I'll be gone most of the day tomorrow. And that was that. No further discussion of leaving, no mention of the judge's concerns. Just the everyday business of ranch life continuing on. That night, as Amelia prepared for bed, she found herself dwelling on Adam's words. You and the child need a home. I have one to offer. Simple, direct like the man himself. No flowery declarations, no false promises, just honest truth. She laid a hand on her belly, feeling the now familiar movements of her child. We're staying, she whispered. For now, at least. November brought colder weather and the first dusting of snow. Amelia's time grew near, and Senora Diaz arrived as promised, a plump, no-nonsense woman with capable hands and a reassuring presence. She took one look at Amelia and declared, 2 weeks, maybe less. Adam became increasingly restless as the days passed. He spent long hours in the barn or checking fences that had already been checked, returning only for meals before disappearing again. When he was present, He was distracted, his eyes frequently darting to Amelia's belly as if expecting the baby to arrive at any moment. "He is afraid," Senora Diaz observed one evening after Adam had bolted his supper and fled to the barn. "Men always are before a birth." "He's not the father," Amelia reminded her. The older woman shrugged. "He is the man of this house, no, the protector. He fears what he cannot control." Amelia considered this. "I hadn't thought of it that way. Men are simple creatures underneath all their complications." Senora Diaz patted Amelia's hand. "He cares for you, that is clear even to these old eyes." "We're friends," Amelia insisted. "Nothing more, if you say so, Majida." But the older woman's knowing smile suggested she believed otherwise. 3 days later, Amelia's labor began. It started as a dull ache in her lower back, gradually intensifying until there was no mistaking what was happening. Senora Diaz took charge immediately, sending Adam to fetch hot water and clean linens before banishing him from the cabin entirely. "Men have no place at a birthing," she declared firmly. "Go tend your animals. We will call if we need you." Adam looked as if he might protest, but a particularly sharp cry from Amelia changed his mind. With a last concerned glance, he retreated. What followed were 18 hours of the most intense pain Amelia had ever experienced. Senora Diaz was a calm, steady presence throughout, offering encouragement and practical assistance in equal measure. Outside, Adam paced like a caged animal, occasionally approaching the cabin only to be shooed away by the midwife. As dawn broke on the second day, Amelia's daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that seemed impossibly loud for such a tiny creature. Exhausted but triumphant, Amelia cradled her newborn, marveling at the perfect miniature features and the thatch of dark hair that promised to be as black as her own. "She is beautiful," Senora Diaz pronounced, cleaning and swaddling the infant. "Strong lungs, good color. You did well, Mama." "Thank you," Amelia whispered, unable to tear her eyes from her daughter's face. "For everything." Once both mother and child were cleaned and settled, Senora Diaz opened the cabin door to admit Adam. He entered hesitantly, hat in hand, his face drawn with worry and lack of sleep. "Come meet my daughter," Amelia said softly. Adam approached the bed with the caution of a man nearing a wild animal. His eyes widened as they fell on the tiny bundle in Amelia's arms. "She's so small," he murmured, "but fierce." Amelia smiled tiredly. "Would you like to hold her?" Panic flashed across Adam's face. "I wouldn't know how." "It's not difficult," Senora Diaz assured him, already lifting the baby from Amelia's arms. Before Adam could protest, she placed the swaddled infant in his large hands, adjusting his hold. "Support the head like so." Adam stood frozen, barely breathing as he stared down at the newborn. The baby squirmed slightly, her tiny face scrunching before relaxing again. Something profound happened in that moment. Amelia saw it transform Adam's face, softening the hard lines carved by solitude and work. "Hello, little one," he whispered, a catch in his voice. "Welcome to the world." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes at the tenderness in his tone. It was the voice of a man who, despite his protestations, knew exactly how to hold something precious. Senora Diaz watched the scene with obvious satisfaction before announcing, "Mama needs rest now. And Papa too, I think." Neither Amelia nor Adam corrected her assumption. The midwife stayed another 3 days, teaching Amelia the basics of infant care and ensuring her recovery was proceeding normally. When she declared both mother and child healthy enough to be left in Adam's care, he insisted on paying her handsomely for her services. "Take care of them," was all she said before mounting her horse and heading back to the Hernandez ranch. Adam promised he would. Life settled into a new rhythm centered around little Hannah, named for Amelia's grandmother. The baby thrived, growing plumper and more alert with each passing day. Amelia recovered quickly, resuming light duties around the cabin while Adam took on more of the household chores to allow her time with the baby. December arrived with a heavy snowfall that transformed the landscape into a pristine blanket of white. Cut off from the nearest town, their world narrowed to the cabin, the barn, and the space between. It was a peaceful isolation, broken only by Hannah's occasional cries and the constant tasks of ranch life. On Christmas Eve, Adam surprised Amelia by bringing in a small pine tree he'd cut from the North Ridge. Together they decorated it with strings of dried berries, paper stars, and a wooden angel Adam carved himself. It wasn't elaborate, but it was perfect in its simplicity. That night, after Hannah had been fed and settled in the cradle Adam had crafted, they sat before the fire, sharing the quiet contentment of the season. "I have something for you," Adam said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not much, but—" He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, Amelia found a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. "Adam," she breathed, "it's beautiful. Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny lock of Hannah's dark hair secured with a thread. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. "Thank you. I shall treasure it always." She fastened it around her neck, the cool metal warming quickly against her skin. "I'm afraid I have nothing for you. You've given me enough," Adam said quietly. "A home that feels like one, meals shared with someone besides myself, a child's laughter." The simplicity of his words touched her deeply. "I never properly thanked you," she said, "for taking us in, for giving us a home when we had none." "It was selfish of me," Adam admitted, his gaze fixed on the fire. "I was lonely before you came. I'd forgotten what it was like to have another person to care about, to care for." Amelia's heart quickened. "And now," Adam turned to look at her, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "Now I can't imagine this place without you in it, without both of you." The air between them seemed to still, heavy with unspoken feelings. Amelia found herself leaning toward him, drawn by a force as natural as gravity. Adam hesitated, uncertainty crossing his face. "Your husband," he began, "would want me to be happy," Amelia finished softly. "To live, not just survive." Adam searched her face, looking for reassurance. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss so gentle it brought fresh tears to her eyes. When they parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want to rush you," he whispered. "You've been through so much." "We both have," Amelia replied, reaching up to touch his weathered cheek. "Perhaps that's why this feels right." From the cradle came a small whimper, then a louder cry. Adam chuckled, pulling back reluctantly. "Your daughter has excellent timing. She's hungry," Amelia said, rising to fetch the baby. As she lifted Hannah from the cradle, she added, "She might be persuaded to go back to sleep afterward, though." The look Adam gave her warmed her more thoroughly than any fire could. That night marked a turning point. Adam moved his bedding into Amelia's room, sleeping on a pallet beside her bed, insisting on propriety despite the change in their relationship. Their kisses grew bolder, their touches more intimate, but Adam maintained a respectful restraint, never pushing for more than Amelia was ready to give. As winter deepened, so did their feelings for each other. They spoke of the future, expanding the garden in spring, possibly adding onto the cabin, buying more cattle when the market improved. Always we and our, never I or mine. Yet for all their growing closeness, Adam never proposed marriage. Amelia told herself it didn't matter. They were happy as they were, building a life together day by day. What need was there for formal declarations? But as February thawed into March, an incident occurred that changed everything. Amelia was hanging laundry while Hannah napped in her cradle on the porch, enjoying the first truly warm day of the season. Adam had ridden to town for supplies, his first such trip since the heavy snows had made travel difficult. A rider approached from the east, not Adam, who would be coming from the west. Amelia shaded her eyes, trying to make out the visitor. As he drew closer, her blood ran cold. She recognized the pristine hat, the expensive coat, the perfectly groomed beard Judge Harlow had returned. Steeling herself, Amelia continued hanging laundry, determined to appear untroubled by his arrival. "Mrs. Grayson," the judge called as he dismounted. "Good day to you." Judge Harlow, she replied evenly. If you're looking for Mr. Norwood, he's gone to town. Actually, I was hoping to speak with you. He approached, removing his hat. His eyes fell on Hannah, sleeping peacefully in her cradle. I see congratulations are in order. Thank you. Amelia positioned herself between the judge and her child, a protective instinct she couldn't suppress. What did you wish to speak about? The judge cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Grayson, I'm not one to mince words. Your situation here has become a matter of concern in the community. My situation, Amelia echoed, though she knew perfectly well what he meant. A young widow living unchaperoned with a bachelor, now with a child. He spread his hands apologetically. There's been talk. Anger flared in Amelia's chest. Talk from people who have never met me, who know nothing of my circumstances. Perhaps, but perception matters. Especially for the child. The judge's expression softened. Children can be cruel, Mrs. Grayson. When your daughter is older, questions will be asked. The painful truth of his words hit home. Hannah would grow up in this community, would attend school with children whose parents were already gossiping about her mother's reputation. What would you have me do? Amelia asked, her voice tight. Leave the only home we have. Not at all. The judge looked genuinely surprised at the suggestion. I'd have you marry the man, Mrs. Grayson, or leave his household. Those are the only respectable options. Before Amelia could form a reply, hoofbeats announced Adam's return. He rode into the yard at a canter, his expression darkening as he recognized the judge's horse. Dismounting quickly, he strode toward them, his body tense with barely contained anger. Harlow, he said flatly, twice in 6 months, I'm honored. Adam, the judge nodded. I was just having a word with Mrs. Grayson about her situation. Her situation is none of your concern, Adam replied coldly, or anyone else's. When it affects the moral fabric of our community, it becomes my concern. The judge's voice hardened. You're living in sin, Adam. With a woman who deserves better. Adam's hands clenched into fists. Get off my property. Adam, Amelia said quietly, placing a restraining hand on his arm. He's not entirely wrong. Adam looked at her in surprise, hurt flashing in his eyes. Not about living in sin, she clarified quickly. But about Hannah. She deserves a name that won't be questioned, a family that won't be whispered about. Understanding dawned in Adam's face, followed by something that might have been relief. He turned back to the judge, his posture relaxing slightly. You're right about one thing, Harlow. Amelia does deserve better. He took a deep breath. She deserves a proper proposal, not one forced by gossip and judgment. With that, Adam turned to Amelia, taking both her hands in his. I should have done this months ago, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I love you, Amelia. You and Hannah both. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Tears blurred Amelia's vision. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. The judge cleared his throat awkwardly. Well then. As it happens, I am authorized to perform marriages. Adam shot him an exasperated look. You came prepared, I see. I came hopeful, the judge corrected. There's a difference. Hannah chose that moment to wake, her small cries drawing Amelia's attention. She lifted her daughter from the cradle, cradling her close. What do you think, little one? She murmured. Shall we make this official? Hannah blinked up at her with eyes that had recently settled into the same deep blue as Adam's, a coincidence that had not gone unnoticed by either of them. Adam stroked the baby's cheek with one gentle finger. I'd be proud to give her my name, he said quietly. To give you both my name. And so, with Hannah as their only witness besides the judge, Amelia and Adam were married on the porch of the cabin that had become her sanctuary. No fancy dress, no elaborate ceremony, just simple vows spoken from the heart, binding them together as a family. I now pronounce you man and wife, Judge Harlow declared, looking genuinely pleased. May God bless this union. Adam kissed Amelia tenderly, then placed a soft kiss on Hannah's forehead. My family, he said, wonder in his voice. My wife and daughter. The judge stayed only long enough to complete the necessary paperwork, promising to file it properly in town. As he mounted his horse to leave, he tipped his hat to them. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Norwood. I wish you every happiness." When he was gone, Adam turned to Amelia with a wry smile. "Not exactly how I imagined proposing to you. How did you imagine it?" she asked, curious, with more privacy and romance, less judicial interference. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been carrying my mother's ring in my pocket for weeks, waiting for the right moment." "You have?" Amelia's heart swelled. Adam nodded, reaching into his pocket to produce a simple gold band with a small pearl. "It's not fancy," he said apologetically. "It's perfect," Amelia breathed as he slid it onto her finger. "Just like everything else about this day." That night, after Hannah was settled in the cradle, they moved into Adam's room. Their room, now husband and wife, came together for the first time. Their lovemaking was tender, unhurried, a physical expression of the bond that had been growing between them for months. Later, lying in the circle of Adam's arms, Amelia marveled at how far she had come from that desperate woman stumbling along a dusty road, alone and afraid. Now she had a home, a husband who loved her, a healthy child. She had found her place in the world. "What are you thinking about?" Adam murmured, his breath warm against her hair. "How lucky I am," she replied honestly. "How fortunate that I found my way to your door that night." "I'm the fortunate one," Adam insisted. "I didn't know how empty this place was until you filled it with life." Amelia turned in his arms to face him. "I love you, Adam Norwood." His smile was all the response she needed, but he gave her words too. "And I love you, Amelia Norwood." Until my dying day. Spring arrived in full force, transforming the ranch with new growth. Amelia expanded her garden, adding herbs and flowers to the practical vegetables. Adam built a small fence around it to keep out rabbits, and a more substantial one around the yard so Hannah could play safely as she grew. Word of their marriage spread through the community, changing perceptions almost overnight. What had been scandalous became respectable. What had been whispered about was now openly admired. The reclusive rancher and the widow who'd captured his heart became something of a romantic legend in Mesa Springs. Neighbors who had never before visited began to call, bringing house-warming gifts and barely disguised curiosity. Adam tolerated the intrusions with surprising grace, seemingly content to see Amelia welcomed into the community. Hannah thrived, growing from a helpless infant into a curious, active baby. She crawled early and showed every sign of walking soon, much to Adam's proud delight. He spent hours with her, showing her animals, teaching her sounds, building her a tiny rocking horse that became her favorite possession. "She has you wrapped around her little finger," Amelia observed one evening as Adam patiently rocked Hannah to sleep, singing softly off-key. "Guilty as charged," he admitted with a grin. "Like mother, like daughter." As summer approached, bringing with it the first anniversary of Amelia's arrival at the ranch, Adam surprised her with a special gift. While she was visiting a neighbor's new baby, he and several hired hands built a proper bedroom for Hannah, adjoining their own. Amelia returned to find the new addition nearly complete, with a small window overlooking the garden and a door connecting it to the main bedroom. "Adam," she gasped, taking in the carefully crafted space. "It's wonderful." "She needs her own room," he said, pleased by her reaction. "And we need our privacy." A blush warmed Amelia's cheeks at his meaning. Their physical relationship had only deepened over the months, each discovering in the other a passionate nature that had merely been waiting for the right partner. "There's something else," Adam added, suddenly looking nervous. "Something I wanted to ask you." "What is it?" Amelia prompted when he hesitated. "Hannah is growing so fast," he began. "Soon she'll be walking, talking. I was wondering if perhaps she might like a brother or sister someday." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. "Are you asking if I want another child?" Adam nodded, watching her carefully. "Only if you do. I know Hannah isn't mine by blood, but I couldn't love her more if she were. Any child of ours would be equally cherished." "Oh, Adam." Amelia moved into his arms. "I would love to have your child, our child." The kiss that followed was filled with promise and a future bright with possibility. 1 year to the day after Amelia had collapsed on Adam's doorstep, they hosted a gathering at the ranch. Friends and neighbors came to celebrate what Adam publicly called their anniversary, though only they knew its true significance. As evening fell and guests began to depart, Amelia stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the land in gold and crimson. Adam joined her, Hannah sleeping against his shoulder. "Happy?" he asked softly. Amelia looked at her husband, this good, strong man who had offered shelter when she needed it most, who had grown to love her and her child as his own. She thought of the home they had built together, the life they shared, the future stretching before them like an open road full of promise. "Completely," she answered, leaning into his side. "Utterly and completely happy." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "When you showed up that night, I thought you were just a woman in need of help. I never imagined you were also the answer to a prayer I hadn't even known I was making." "Which was?" "For a family," he said simply. "For love." Hannah stirred, nestling closer to Adam's neck without waking. Watching them together, Amelia's heart swelled with gratitude for all that had led her to this moment, even the pain and loss that had set her on the dusty road to Adam's door. "Thank you," she whispered, partly to Adam, partly to whatever fate or providence had guided her steps. "For what?" Adam asked. "For giving us a home," Amelia said. "For giving Hannah your name, for loving us both so well." Adam's free arm tightened around her waist. "Thank you for staying," he replied, "for making this place a home, for being my wife." As the last light faded from the sky, they turned together and walked into the warm, welcoming house that was no longer just a cabin on a lonely ranch, but a true home filled with love and the promise of many happy years to come. 5 years later, the Norwood Ranch had prospered beyond Adam's most ambitious dreams. The original cabin had expanded into a proper house with 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a wide, covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. The herd had tripled in size, and Adam had hired 2 permanent hands to help manage the increased workload. Hannah, now 6 years old, was a spirited child with her mother's dark hair and her adoptive father's blue eyes. She attended school in Mesa Springs, riding there with Adam when he had business in town, and staying with the schoolteacher's family during the week. She was joined at home by 3-year-old twins, Matthew and Mark, who had Adam's sandy hair and Amelia's green eyes. The boys were a whirlwind of energy, keeping their parents constantly on their toes. And now, as summer ripened toward fall, Amelia cradled another newborn, a tiny girl they named Elizabeth, born just 2 weeks earlier. "Another daughter," Adam had whispered when he first held her, tears shimmering in his eyes. "I'm the richest man in the territory." Life wasn't perfect. There were droughts that threatened the herd, illnesses that swept through the children, disagreements between husband and wife that sometimes required days to resolve. But beneath it all ran a current of deep, abiding love and gratitude that carried them through every challenge. On this particular evening, as Amelia sat on the porch nursing Elizabeth while watching Adam play a game of tag with Hannah and the twins, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From desperate widow to beloved wife and mother of 4, from homeless wanderer to mistress of a thriving ranch, it seemed almost miraculous. Hannah's laughter rang out as Adam caught her around the waist, swinging her high into the air. "Papa, put me down," she squealed in delight. "Not until you admit I'm the fastest papa in the West," Adam teased, spinning her around. "Never," Hannah declared with mock defiance. The twins clamored for their turn, little arms reaching up. "Me next, Papa, me next." Adam obliged, setting Hannah down to scoop up Matthew and Mark, one in each arm. Their shrieks of joy startled Elizabeth, who pulled away from Amelia's breast with an indignant whimper. "Sorry, love," Amelia murmured, soothing the baby back to her feeding. "Your brothers and sister are just having fun with Papa." As if hearing her words, Adam looked up, catching Amelia's eye across the yard. The love in his gaze still had the power to take her breath away, even after all these years. Later, when the children were asleep, Hannah in her own room, the twins in theirs, and Elizabeth in the cradle beside their bed, Adam and Amelia lay together in the quiet darkness, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that night?" Adam asked softly. "When you first came here, often," Amelia admitted. "I was so afraid, so desperate." "You didn't seem desperate," Adam recalled. "Exhausted, yes, but there was a strength in you even then, a determination." "I had to be strong," Amelia said, "for Hannah, though she wasn't even born yet. But inside I was terrified." Adam's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "And now," Amelia considered the question, "now I'm still strong, but not from fear or desperation, from love, from knowing I'm exactly where I'm meant to be with exactly the right person." Adam pressed a kiss to her forehead. "When I built this place, I thought it was just for me, a refuge from a world I didn't quite fit into. I never imagined it would become this, a home filled with children's laughter, with a woman who completes me in ways I hadn't known I was incomplete." "God works in mysterious ways," Amelia said softly. "He led me to your door that night when I had nowhere else to go. And I'll thank him every day for the rest of my life for that," Adam murmured, "for sending me the family I didn't know I needed." As they drifted towards sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Amelia thought about the pregnant woman who had wandered across dust roads all those years ago, seeking only temporary shelter and finding instead a lifetime of love. How strange and wonderful life's journey could be, with its unexpected turns and surprising destinations. She had come to Adam Norwood's door looking for a brief sanctuary. Instead, she had found a home and a name that would be hers for all her days. And in giving her both, Adam had found the family his solitary heart had been waiting for. It was, Amelia thought as sleep claimed her, a love story worth every step of the difficult road that had led her here to this man, these children, this life they had built together on a patch of wild western land they now called home.